In the beginning, no words, yet everything was speaking. Stars burning sermons into the dark. And somehow, it was all calling your name. Fire like a story untold. Day to day, it's a river of gold. No language, no sound, still it echoes loud. Through the silence, heaven screams through the clouds. Sunrise runs like a champion free, dancing on horizons just to be seen. Not a guide, just a servant in flight, wearing joy like a robe made of light. But I was rushing, head down in the noise, missing galaxies while chasing my voice. To creation whispered, slow down. See, this whole wide world is preaching to thee. Step outside, let the heavens read you. Feel the weight of a glory that sees you. You're not lost in the vast unknown. You're being called, you're being shown. From the cosmos to the human heart, yeah, you've been speaking from the start. Through the stars, through every star, you know exactly where we are. From the silence to the soul's deep cry, yeah, you're the truth we can't deny. Great creator, still you come close, closer than the air we know. Your word drops sweet like honey on fire, burning through my tangled desires. Not a rule but a rhythm of grace, turning brokenness into a place where the weary find reason to stand, where the lost get a map in their hands. Simple hearts become oceans of wise, blind eyes open, flooded with light. More than gold, more than pleasure I chase. It's an ambush of beauty, not duty or race. Every line like a mirror I fear, showing who I am, bringing you near. Strip me down, every lie I've hidden, every quiet war I've been living.
The heavens preach, the word holds the mirror. Imagine stepping out into the dead of night.
Yeah, no streetlights, right?
Exactly. No streetlights hum in the background. No ambient city glow paints the clouds orange. There is just you, the cool air, and a vast, completely unpolluted canopy of erupting stars. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It's such a striking image to start with.
It really is. So we are bringing you into a profoundly moving midweek teaching from the ICOC Jos community today. We pulled together a transcript of a sermon delivered by Indu Eek, the presentation deck used that night, and the live notes from their Zoom gathering.
And our mission as we explore these sources is to really examine this staggering reality that the creator of the universe absolutely refuses to be silent.
Right.
I mean, he is speaking to you universally and he's speaking to you personally.
Which is such a massive concept.
It really is a sweeping concept. When you look at the structure of this teaching, it forces you to completely reevaluate how you interact with the world around you, and more importantly, how you handle the quiet moments in your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And to anchor our conversation, we're going to follow the exact roadmap laid out in the presentation. As the teaching notes framed it, the Psalm's 3 movements, from cosmos to commandment to confession.
That progression is everything. It's basically the architectural backbone of Psalm 19.
So think of it like a camera lens slowly zooming in. We're going to start with a massive cinematic wide shot of the swirling galaxies.
The cosmos.
Right, the cosmos. Then the camera moves into a medium shot, focusing tightly on the written pages of the scriptures. And finally, we push all the way in for a macro, this intimate close-up on the trembling human heart.
I love that visual. It perfectly captures the intimacy of what happened during this specific teaching, too. Because to give you some context on the source material, this wasn't an academic lecture delivered in some sterile hall.
Right, it was very real.
Exactly. It was a live Zoom call uniting believers across Nigeria. You have people joining from Jos and others dialing in from Kaduna, right as massive, heavy rains were just pounding on their roofs.
Wow, so right in the middle of a literal storm.
Yeah, it was this raw, communal space. In fact, the notes from that very meeting synthesized the whole night brilliantly. They wrote exactly this. And to explain how David described God's communication through three means: creation, heavens and sun, the Torah, scripture, and the human heart.
So let's step outside into that wide shot first. Long before David was a king, navigating the heavy politics of a throne, he was a shepherd boy. And David forces us to look up.
What we are examining in these first 6 verses is what theologians categorize as general revelation. It's fascinating because the specific name David uses for God here is El Damal, which means the transcendent creator.
The God of unimaginable, distant power.
Yes. So picture David in that pasture. He's out there for weeks on end. He has no syllabus. He doesn't have a theology degree. He doesn't even have a scroll to read.
Right.
Yet he is receiving this overwhelming, massive revelation that heavens are preaching, but they do so in total silence.
And the Hebrew imagery the teaching highlights here is just visceral. I mean, the English translations usually say something like, day after day they pour forth speech, which sounds poetic, but a bit polite.
It does sound polite, but the original Hebrew is anything but polite. The word used there is yabia.
Yabia.
Yeah, it translates to gushing or bubbling up like a spring that has completely breached its banks and cannot be contained.
Wow.
So the sky isn't just clearing its throat to offer thought. It is an unrelenting, continuous eruption of testimony about the weight and glory of God. It's a sensory overload of silence.
That is incredible. And then David points the camera at the loudest, most dominant preacher in that sky, right?
Yeah.
The sun. Now remember the historical context here. If you look at the ancient Babylonians or the Egyptians, they literally worshiped the sun as a supreme deity.
Oh, absolutely. They built entire empires around it.
But David strips the sun of its divinity. He says, no, this burning sphere isn't a god, it's just a servant.
But it's a fiercely joyful servant. David uses 2 very distinct metaphors here to explain how the sun operates. First, he compares it to a bridegroom coming out of his chuppah, the traditional wedding canopy.
Okay, yeah.
Think about the energy of a groom on his wedding day. Radiant, bursting with anticipation and purpose. And second, he calls the sun a gibber, which translates to a champion or a mighty warrior.
I love that. A warrior.
Right. And here's the key mechanism. This warrior rejoices to run its race. It doesn't rise out of drudgery or this cold mechanical obligation. It rises out of the overflow of pure joy.
Every single day.
Every single day, it faithfully does its job without ever turning around and demanding applause.
Wait, I love the poetry of this, but let's look at our reality for a second. The people dialing into that Zoom call were dealing with literal storms and pouring rain. And today, you and I are all drowning in glowing screens, endless notifications, group chats.
It's constant.
Right. So is it actually still possible for us to hear a silent sermon? I mean, we're so relentlessly distracted that the idea of hearing the stars speak feels almost naive.
That is the exact tension the teaching confronts, and it addresses it with such grounded pastoral authority.
So what's the answer?
The answer is yes, you can still hear it, but you have to understand how it works. Your only required credential to hear this sermon is your attention, your deliberate attention.
Just paying attention.
Exactly. David's classroom was just a field. He simply had to look up. The profound reality is that the sky studies us just as much as we study it. It's preaching a relentless sermon that reaches every corner of the earth, cutting through the noise of any smartphone.
But you have to do something about it.
Yes, it requires you to physically alter your posture. You have to be willing to walk outside, feel the drop in temperature, feel the breeze, and intentionally observe.
Which brings us perfectly to the transition. The wide shot of the sky is shouting across the cosmos, but eventually, God wants to whisper directly into your ear. We move from general revelation to special revelation.
From the cosmos to the commandment.
Exactly. The tone shift in verses 7 through 11 is unmistakable. God is no longer referred to by the distant title of El, right?
Right. He is now addressed by his intimate covenant name, YHWH. This is the God who makes promises and keeps them. And here we are introduced to the Torah, the living word.
And the teaching breaks down 6 specific attributes of this word. What I find so compelling is that David isn't just listing facts. He's explaining the exact psychological and spiritual mechanism of how the text acts on the human soul.
That's brilliant.
For instance, he pairs the restorative and the illuminating effects. He says the law is perfect and that it is trustworthy.
Let's unpack how that actually functions. The Hebrew word for perfect used here is tamim, meaning it is whole, complete, lacking absolutely nothing.
Tamim.
And its specific function is to restore the nephesh, your entire being, your whole person. Why does reading an ancient text restore a weary soul? Because it gives you a narrative that makes sense of human suffering and ultimate purpose.
It pulls you out of your immediate circumstances.
Exactly. It recalibrates you by pulling you out of your paralyzing anxiety and entering you in what is eternally real.
And when David says it is trustworthy, making wise the simple, the teaching makes a crucial distinction here. The simple doesn't mean you are foolish or, gullible.
Right. To be simple in this context means to be an open vessel. You aren't approaching the text with your cup already full of your own opinions.
You're empty.
You are empty, ready to receive. And when you do, it gives you profound wisdom.
Then David moves to the emotional and cognitive effects. He says the statutes are giving joy to the heart and that they are radiant, giving light to the eyes. Think about how that works mentally. When you are stressed or making decisions in the dark, your vision literally and metaphorically narrows. You get tunnel vision.
Yeah, you can't see the big picture at all.
The word acts as a radiant light that clears away the fog, suddenly illuminating the entire landscape so you can see where to step.
And it brings a deep, anchored joy. Not a fleeting hit of dopamine, but a structural joy, which connects directly to the final attributes he lists. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever, and the decrees are firm and altogether righteous.
And why does this matter to us today?
Because we live in a culture of constantly shifting moral sands. What is acceptable today is condemned tomorrow. The word offers a bedrock foundation that permanently aligns our broken, confused sense of justice.
But here is where the language pivots entirely. David stops describing the mechanics of the law, and he starts using the visceral language of craving. He says this word is more desired than gold and sweeter than honey.
Contrast those two symbols in the ancient world for a second. Gold represents wealth, absolute security, power, and the ability to control your circumstances.
Right.
Honey represents pure, unadulterated pleasure eaten raw, dripping straight from the honeycomb. David is stating, without a hint of hesitation, that God's communication surpasses both the ultimate security and the ultimate pleasure that the world can possibly offer.
He isn't using the language of religious obligation. He isn't waking up and saying, I really ought to read the Torah today. He is starving for it.
He craves it.
Reading the word isn't like eating spiritual vegetables out of obligation. It's an ambush of beauty. But here is the catch. When you get close to something that radiant, it fundamentally acts like a mirror. It reflects exactly who you are.
And that reflection forces the transition to the third and final movement of the psalm. The camera pushes in for that tight, uncomfortable close-up. The cosmos has shouted its proof, the commandment has illuminated the path, and now we arrive at the confession of the human heart.
Because once that mirror is held up to you, the celebration has to pause, doesn't it? You are suddenly left staring at the massive, glaring gap between who you confidently think you are and who the word actually reveals you to be.
It is a devastating moment of clarity, and yet David's reaction in verses 12 through 14 is just brilliant. He doesn't respond with toxic shame.
He doesn't run away and hide in guilt.
No, his response is entirely petition. He meets terrifying exposure with complete vulnerability. He runs directly toward the God who is holding the mirror.
The teaching points out that David addresses 2 entirely different categories of failure here. First, he pleads, "Forgive my hidden faults," the blind spots. The teaching used this brilliant analogy of a slow leak in a container of oil.
Yeah, the slow leaks.
It is the unconscious, microscopic drifting away from the path that you are completely unaware of until you are miles off course.
We all have psychological blind spots the size of continents. We rationalize our behavior so naturally that we don't even see the damage we cause. And David's prayer regarding these hidden faults is a plea for cleansing.
Cleansing.
He is essentially admitting, I am opaque to myself. I don't even know the depths of what I've done wrong, so I need you to clean the rooms of my heart that I don't even have the keys to.
Oh, wow. But then he pivots to something much darker, right? The willful sins. In Hebrew, these are the zidim, the presumptuous arrogant sins.
Yes. This isn't a blind spot. This is the deliberate, calculated overriding of your own conscience. You hear the internal whisper saying, don't do it. You know exactly what the mirror says, and you step right over the line anyway.
And notice the shift in the prayer here. For willful sins, the petition isn't just for cleansing, it's a desperate plea for restraint.
Exactly.
David says, keep back your servant. Let them not have dominion over me. He knows how quickly a deliberate choice turns into a habit, and how a habit turns into a master. He is begging God not to let these choices enslave him.
Bringing this back to that live Zoom room in Nigeria, you can truly feel how heavily this landed with the community.
Yeah.
The notes mention that participants praised the teacher for making these incredibly deep theological concepts so profoundly accessible. It requires immense communal honesty to admit that we are enslaved by our distractions.
He confessed that we constantly, willingly trade the rich honey of the word for the cheap junk food of endless scrolling on Instagram or Facebook.
It really is the modern equivalent of keeping your head down, staring at a patch of dirt, while a supernova of testimony is erupting in the sky right above you. We choose the artificial distraction over the authentic beauty.
I have to ask this, though, for anyone listening who is feeling the heavy weight of that mirror right now. Isn't it terrifying to stand before a perfect, holy God and ask him to forgive things you don't even know you did? I mean, to willingly invite that level of absolute exposure.
It is terrifying, but only if you don't understand the character of who you are talking to.
What do you mean?
Well, if we connect this back to the broader picture of the teaching, the ultimate goal isn't to be perfectly sinless. God knows that is impossible for us. David says, "Then I shall be blameless." Being blameless doesn't mean you never fail. It means you are completely covered, held, and forgiven.
Wow.
God doesn't just forgive the sins you are articulate enough to confess. He cleanses the wounds you can't even name. And this breathtaking level of grace is only possible because of who David surrenders to in the very last verse.
So how does this actually change your Tuesday afternoon? The service in Josses didn't end with a neat theological summary to put on a shelf. It ended with concrete physical invitations. And we want to extend those directly to you. First, step outside today. Literally go outside. Leave your phone on the desk, feel the breeze on your face, and look at the sky. Let creation study you for a moment.
Yeah, that's so important.
Second, open the scriptures not as a textbook, but as a mirror. Let it expose you and let it heal you. Taste the honey. And third, dare to pray that incredibly brave prayer. Ask for the cleansing of your hidden faults and plead for restraint from the willful sins you are struggling to stop.
That is where theology becomes life. The original service integrated all of this so seamlessly into a time of worship led by Victor Opufo, blending the teaching with communal prayer. It was a holistic surrender, and it all culminates in verse 14, where David assigns his final two names to God.
Why?
He calls him Rock. The Hebrew word is Sur. It means the immovable foundation, the solid cliff face you press your back against when the ground beneath your feet is entirely giving way.
Sure.
And he calls him Redeemer Goel. This is the family kinsman who steps in to buy you back from the slave market and pay a debt you could never afford. So, as a pastoral send-off to you today, we leave you with this final anchoring prayer from the Shepherd King. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.
If the cosmos is loud enough to declare the terrifying glory of God, and the word is sharp enough to expose the deepest hidden flaws of your heart, what does it mean that this exact same God who hurled the galaxies into space is the one intimately leaning in, acting as your Redeemer, just to forgive your smallest mistake? What is the silent sermon that creation has been preaching to you that you haven't stopped long enough to hear? Take the next few seconds of silence to sit with that. Sure. In this deep dive, we explore a profound teaching from the ICOC Jos Community on Psalm 19, mapping David's journey from the silent, gushing testimony of the cosmos to the radiant mirror of the scriptures, and finally to the vulnerable confession of the human heart. Discover the mechanisms behind how the Creator relentlessly communicates with us, and how the ancient texts offer psychological and spiritual healing when we surrender to the God who is both infinite Creator and intimate Redeemer.
The sky isn't just clearing its throat to offer a thought. It is an unrelenting eruption of testimony. 2. Reading the Word isn't like eating spiritual vegetables out of obligation. It is an ambush of beauty. 3. God doesn't just forgive the sins you can confess. He cleanses the wounds you can't even name.
The sky spills fire like like a story untold. Day to day, it's a river of gold. No language, no sound, still it echoes loud. Through the silence, heaven screams through the clouds. Sunrise runs like a champion free, dancing on horizons just to be seen. Not a god, just a servant in flight, wearing joy like a robe made of light. But I was rushing head down in the noise, missing galaxies while chasing my voice, till creation whispered, slow down. See, this whole wide world is preaching to thee.
Step outside.
Let the heavens read you. Feel the weight of a glory that sees you. You're not lost in the vast unknown. You're being called, you're being shown.
From the cosmos to the human heart,
You've been speaking
from the start
through the stars,
through every scar.
you know exactly where we are.
From the silence to the soul's deep cry,
You're the truth,
we can't deny.
great creator,
Till you come close,
closer than the air we know. Your word drops sweet like honey on fire, burning through my tangled desires. Not a rule but a rhythm of grace, turning brokenness into a place. Woo!